today on Crafty Brewers.
You find yourself in a cherry orchard. How are you going to put that into a beer? Is it the cherry blossom? Is it the cherry fruit? Is it the pit of the cherry, SMUGGLED? Or is it the stem? And we've used every part of the cherry in various different beers. Some of those flavorings are crap. And you can throw, peach essence into a beer. That doesn't mean it's going to be good. You have to find the right stuff.
So what is going to be in the Crafty Brewers collaboration beer?
Jeez, guys, we should talk about that.
Welcome to Crafty Brewers Tales Behind Craft Beer, the podcast that will increase your appreciation of craft beer and admiration for the people who make it. Today, we have traveled to the Westtown neighborhood of Chicago to go from grain to glass with Phil Zaleski, head brewer at Forbidden Root Restaurant and Brewery, to share stories that make each brewer unique. I am beer drinker and hellraiser Brian Noonan, and all my opinions are strictly my own for good reason. Behind the camera, of course, is our executive producer, Cody Goff. Hey, Cody, why are you excited about tonight's episode, or today's episode, or this episode?
I'm excited, and you should be excited about this episode because we're going to learn about what beer requires ingredients smuggled from France. You'll hear a fascinating story about cuisine in Thailand and how it's inspired the beers at this amazing brewery. What is a Kveik ale? What is beer with heather like? What is beer with Génépi like? What is a flavored torpedo? And will it sink your battleship? Yeah, there's a lot to get to.
Well, listen. Let me give you a little history of Forbidden Root Restaurant and Brewery. If you haven't been here, you need to be here. They're at 1746 West Chicago Avenue in Chicago. ForbiddenRoot.com is the website. This is the original space that we are in right now in Westtown. They have another tap room in Ravenswood's neighborhood of Chicago and Columbus, Ohio. Mm-hmm. So if you're a Buckeyes fan, I guess that's the place to go. They are also Chicago's first botanic brewery, and the brewery opened in 2016 in the Westtown neighborhood, as I said right here. This is what I found very odd, and we'll get to this in a minute after I introduce Phil. Robert Finkel was the man whose idea it was to open Forbidden Root. He was in high-stakes, high-end entrepreneurship, and he wanted to develop a truly brewed root beer. Yes, his desire to make that root beer evolved into the embrace, the bigger picture of botanicals, and grew into what Forbidden Root is now, which is the brew pub that was voted once again in the top 10 brew pubs in the country, according to USA Today. They've made the list since 2017. They took first in 2022. They've taken second place 3 times, third place last year. They're on the list again. And the man who's making those beers possible is our guest. Phil Zaleski is the head brewer here at Forbidden Root.
Oh,
Thank you for being here. This is very exciting.
Thank you. What an introduction
we
that
listen,
is, Brian.
Build you up. I don't want anybody going, I don't know, he kind of short-shrifted us.
Oh, geez,
no.
I think that says it all. Can we stop now?
Yes. Thanks for coming, Phil. We appreciate you sticking around. We got
it's
everything.
My pleasure.
All right, so this is a term that obviously we don't hear much, because Forbidden Root is Chicago's first botanical brewery. What does that mean exactly? Because, malt and hops technically are botanicals,
Sure.
and everybody uses those.
Beer is botanical by its very nature, of course. But I think the idea of botanical brewery was born out of the ideas of Randy Mosher, who is one of the owners here and part of the day-to-day, formulation of our products and our course as we trudge on through to beer nirvana, and Robert Finkel. They both have a fascination with interesting ingredients, and Robert is our root master.
Okay.
So he loves to find interesting ingredients from all over the world. And he'll find like the weirdest stuff and he'll bring it back here. And sometimes it's not easy to get it back here. Like Génépi. We made a Génépi beer. Génépi is an alpine botanical that's only in the French Alps, I believe.
Okay.
And the French government prohibits the export of Génépi, from what I understand.
Okay.
Robert was there on vacation and fell in love. Well, I mean, there are Génépi liqueurs and whatnot.
Okay.
And he sort of fell in love with the idea of Génépi as an ingredient for beer. Somehow he worked his magic and was able to get enough back into the country for us to make an Alpine-inspired beer.
Was it like Midnight Express, where he had it taped to his torso as he went through
Kinda,
customs?
sort of.
Okay.
He knew a guy who knew a guy, and somehow that opened up the doors to get these ingredients. And that's sort of, I just bring that up as one example of the different things that come into play when we're choosing our ingredients. And of course, Randy Mosher is, I mean, he's beer guru, and you cannot be a home brewer anywhere in the world and not know Randy Mosher.
Yeah.
I mean, he's written so many books, and he's so invested in what flavors are and how they play out, and of course what comes along with that, the choice of ingredients and whatnot. He also, now that he's with Forbidden Root, it's wonderful for us, but he also came out of his experiences with Five Rabbit Brewing.
Okay, yeah.
And so they were doing things like no place in Chicago, I don't even know if any place in the country was doing beers like this before, but like, for instance, he was making beers with oregano and whatnot, and chili peppers and other things. And now chili peppers are not horribly unusual, but certainly the idea of using things like oregano or
that
whatnot,
sounds odd.
it was very odd.
Unusual.
But they were really very good.
Okay.
And I think that Robert caught on to the fact that Randy was doing something really great. And I might be wrong about this, but I think Robert reached out to Randy, and ever since they've had a partnership.
Let's go back for a minute, because so when Robert comes back with that Génépi or some of the other things that he finds around the world, do you know these are coming, or does he show up and say, "Listen, Phil, I found this thing in the Swiss Alps. It was growing under a yak's hoof. It's a beautiful botanical. Put this in a beer for me."
If it was growing under a yak's foot, definitely Robert knows about it. It's really kind of crazy that way. Sometimes we know, and other times we'll get a shipment from China, and it will be, I don't know, 50 pounds of pea flour or something like that, which we've used all of them in some to greater success than others, but he's always finding these things, and we do our best to incorporate them into a beer that is not only interesting, because interesting beers only go so far.
Sure.
But if you really like to drink them, that's when it's a success.
Was it when you first started brewing these, and you were at other breweries before this?
Yes, I was.
We'll get to your background in a minute. But is there a line when Forbidden Root went from people thinking it was experimental to people going, "Oh no, Forbidden Root, they use interesting ingredients, and it's stuff that may sound unusual but is easy to drink"?
I think that we've always, number one, we've always been an experimental brewery. We're always trying new things.
Sure.
And we're always looking for those new ingredients, whether they be herbs or spices or fruits or roots or what have you. We've always tried to push forward and incorporate unusual but appropriate ingredients.
Right.
And I think that
where's that line?
Well, that's a tough thing, because people like what we do.
Yeah.
And I think we've surprised some of our clientele by turning them on to some beers that do have those unusual ingredients that you wouldn't necessarily find in beer.
Yeah.
So where is that line? I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, we've gone different directions. Well, I shouldn't say we've gone different directions. We've had different places where we pushed in the market. Our New England IPAs, for instance, have always been very good for us.
Okay.
And so there's one channel that we put our energies into. But then we'll also do something like this beer here, which is Scottish heather in here, as well as heather honey that, again, Robert sourced.
Okay.
And then sweet orange peel.
Wow.
And these are things that, again, I mean, listen, any home brewer out there has put the kitchen sink in their brew.
Sure.
We know. That's where I, come from ultimately.
Just trying all different kinds of things.
But have we ever produced a beer that was more interesting than drinkable? Probably. Probably. But again, we've always been able to find an audience for that. So have we ever gone too wacky or alienated people from putting in weird ingredients? Maybe some people.
Yeah.
But I think the simple fact that we're here after 10 years says that we're doing something
the core
right.
Audience. Let me, on some of these, like if it's a fruit or something like that, obviously the smell and the taste come into play. When either you source or Robert sources or somebody comes up with just a root, is it all about the smell? How do you determine how it would fit and what kind of beer it would go with? Because unless you're chewing on the root like a,
Well, that's and sometimes it comes out that way.
Oh, okay.
The former head brewer, Nick Williams, who I learned so much from, and he was here for many years, and both I and Forbidden Root owe him a debt of gratitude. He's always been exceptional at being able to blend flavors and ingredients. And one of the things that I've learned from him is that sometimes the ideas for beer come from everything around us, in that you find yourself in a cherry orchard, and those wonderful smells. Right. So how are you going to put that how are you going to put that into a beer? Yeah. Is it the cherry blossom? Is it the cherry fruit? Oh. Is it the pit of the cherry, machleb, which is very big in our Arab cultures and whatnot? Or is it the stem? And we've used every part of the cherry in various different beers. And they all have a particular flavor, or they add something special in any application we've found.
Had you done a lot of experimenting with botanicals before you started with Forbidden Root, or is this kind of new territory since you've been here?
I've always been a foodie, so I love food and unusual ingredients. Some of the best experiences I've had with food and beverage have been when I've been traveling overseas. Okay. And, my brother ran a hotel in Bangkok, Thailand, for a while, and so I was going over to visit with him.
Was it the White Lotus?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, jeez. Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be great?
It would be kind of cool.
No, but
because I'd like to see you use the suicide fruit.
Yeah.
See how you would use that in a beer.
Yeah, that would be something, wouldn't it? No, what I'm getting at, Brian, is that when I was in Thailand, just going to the market, you see so many fruits and vegetables and all sorts of things that we just don't see here.
Right, sure.
Yeah, and so like it was not uncommon to go to a Thai grocery store or market and see 7 different kinds of bananas. It's not unusual to go and see several different kinds of limes. Limes with ridges, limes without seeds, limes with seeds, just all these crazy things. And I remember like drinking in a bar with my brother one night, and Thailand is famous for its street food. Yeah. So you go out drinking one night, and then you get out, and everybody hits the street vendors. Okay. And I remember there was a woman outside of one of the bars we were drinking at who was selling hard-cooked eggs, right? Just hard-cooked eggs. And I thought, well, that's like a boneless chicken dinner, right? So I thought I'd get a couple of those and, good protein fix. And I was amazed at how the egg differed from what I was used to. Now, sure, the poultry may be a little bit different there, but the thing that really caught my attention was the fact that they were cooked over a wood grill.
Okay.
Now, the wood in Thailand is different.
Sure.
They don't have the same trees that we have here. So the flavor that was coming through the shell was because of this particular kind of wood that this woman was cooking the eggs over. And so that just sort of plays into the kinds of things that we do at Forbidden Root.
Yeah.
We like to find those things that are a little bit different. And it's really exciting when you find something that really works well.
Have you had one of those eureka moments where you got an ingredient and you weren't quite sure what to do when you got it, but then all of a sudden it was like, that's it. That's what I need to put with it. That's
Probably.
what it goes with.
Probably. There's so many different instances where we've tried so many different ingredients. I will say that one of the things stands out, and this is credit to former head brewer Nick Williams. We made this beer, a kettle sour, one time with Feijoa.
With what?
Feijoa fruit.
What?
And I think it's from Brazil.
Okay.
And I think it's known as the pineapple guava.
Ooh.
And so it has characteristics of both. It has flavors that you might find in both a guava and or a pineapple. We made this fantastic beer with it. Unfortunately, Feijoa is kind of hard to come by.
You don't go to Jewel and pick that up?
But we were able to get some for this beer. Unfortunately, it was only enough for 15 barrels of beer, but I still, think about that beer in particular. That was a wonderful ingredient. Yeah. And that was something that again, in our constant pursuit of trying to find interesting, neat things to work with, we stumble on some great things. Now, I'll be honest with you, not everything is a home run.
Sure.
But we are always trying.
Yeah.
And I would like to think that more oftentimes than not, it's a success.
When you're brewing something like that you're not sure about, do you run just a smaller batch, or do you do everything kind of the same and go, well, if it works, it's great. If not, somebody's going to drink it.
It would be wonderful to be able to run like a small batch.
Like an experimental batch, yeah.
But that's not always
the case.
That's not always the case. So, so we generally jump in with 2 feet and again,
swing big.
Yeah, swing big.
All right.
And shoot for the moon. The worst thing that happens is you hit the top of the fence, right?
Exactly.
So
I noticed with all these, you have a number of beers, 3 or 4 wheat beers as the base for a number of beers. Does a wheat beer lend itself more to adding different botanicals than other styles?
It works particularly well for fruit beers.
Oh, okay.
It just does. We've had a lot of good success with that. We do our strawberry basil Hefeweizen, which is probably our best seller even still. That's been one that we've been doing since the very beginning. We do a peach wit beer as well.
Oh wow! Okay.
And it just there's a sort of a softness that goes along with a wheat beer.
Okay. Yeah.
That really opens itself up to beers with a fruit addition. Okay. And so we've been experimenting with that a lot. We don't limit ourselves to that. Part of the reason why you may see a few that have a wheat base is because we are in the process of experimenting and coming up with some more fruit beers. And some of these are one step in the process of finding our next flagship.
Nice.
So we're always working.
Is there one in the lead at this point?
Well, our Minty Berries is doing exceptionally well.
I was looking at that earlier.
Yeah, Minty Berries it's a great beer, and it's so simple. It's so simple, but it really has been a crowd pleaser for us, and I'm very excited about that.
Nice.
And that was one that my assistant brewer Waldo and I, we will occasionally just kick out ideas. And that was one that we just kicked out. And we're like, let's give it a try. And we weren't sure if it was going to get any traction, but it has.
It has.
So
Cody, get ready for a rim shot. Where is Waldo?
Where is Waldo?
I thought about making that same joke.
I know, but it's so lame.
And
That's
then
why
I was
you left it to
I'll
me.
have to cut it. I would just have to say that was so bad. I'm cutting it.
It was so bad. That's why I stopped and interrupted Phil to make a point that I know how lame that joke was.
Yeah, but you know what?
Everybody was waiting.
It's always appropriate, though, Brian. It's always appropriate. And Waldo has grown up hearing that joke.
Of course
about
he has.
1,000
I would
million,
never say it if he were
times.
actually here, because I get the same thing with Caddyshack.
You know,
with Noonan Miss It. I get that. So I empathize with Waldo, and I would never do it to his face. Waldo, if you're watching, I'm sorry for picking the low-hanging fruit, which could be an ingredient in a future Forbidden Root beer. You never know.
Waldo's actually in South Korea right now.
Is he searching for various things?
Well, he's there for a wedding. Some
nice.
dear friends of his and his wife are getting married. But before he left, I told him, keep on the lookout for interesting anything. Because again, like I was saying before, there's so much in this world.
Oh, yeah.
And we don't know, we in America don't always know about these interesting things. You know, it takes some time to filter back to us. One of the great things about working with Waldo, he's of Mexican heritage, and he's turned me on all sorts of interesting
there must
Mexican
be tons
ideas.
of spices and fruits.
We did a beer called Mr. Patayo Head. And Patayo is the fruit of a pipe organ cactus. And it's similar to dragon fruit, but it's not dragon fruit.
Okay.
It's not. Sometimes it's lumped together, but it's very specific in its flavors. And we did a fantastic beer with that. Now, the interesting thing that happens to us sometimes is that we'll end up with a lot of fruit and we have to process it.
Yeah.
Now, Patayo is a cactus, so we had all these cactus fruits with spines in it. And that was a very painful afternoon trying to process enough of that fruit to make this beer. But it was a huge hit. Now, I don't know if we're going to do it again because of the spines and all the trouble.
All the bleeding hands between you and Waldo.
But it was a wonderful beer.
Nice.
And that's a lot of fun for us, and that's something, there's beers out there with dragon fruit. There's liquors out there with dragon fruit. I was going to say, you've got
something with dragon fruit on the menu now, right?
Yeah. But that's actual dragon fruit. That's not the Patayo, which is, again, some people will argue with me, it's not the same thing.
Don't add us. It's Patayo, dragon fruit, different. Relax. Phil Zaleski is my guest. He is the head brewer here at Forbidden Root Restaurant and Brewery. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to feature something that Phil wants to talk about. And I have been drinking a style of beer I have never heard of, so Phil will explain it because, well, he made it. We'll do all of that after this on Crafty Brewers. We're back at Forbidden Root Restaurant and Brewery, 1746 West Chicago Avenue in the Westtown neighborhood of Chicago. ForbiddenRoot.com is the website. If you're in Columbus, Ohio, there's a location there too. And if you're in the Ravenswood neighborhood of Chicago, there's a location there too. But we are in the flagship place with the head brewer, Phil Zaleski. Phil,
C'est moi.
I'm enjoying the fact that when we asked you to pick which beer you wanted to showcase, you struggled as if I asked you, King Solomon's Choice, pick your favorite child, because you wanted, you were leaning towards Strawberry Basil because it's one of the flagships.
We worked very hard on this guy.
And you were also leaning towards your India Pale Ale.
No, this is a New England. That's our hazy.
New England. Oh, the hazy. Okay.
That's our hazy.
So you came up with two others that we're going to get to, but I have to ask you because I'm always excited when I come upon a style of beer that I have not heard of, and I tried it, and I have been drinking Bicycle Fire.
Yes.
Which is a Kveik.
What is a Kveik?
Kveik
It's interesting. This is something that's sort of come onto the American brewing scene in just the last couple years, 2-3 years. There's a strain of yeast or yeasts, many strains from Scandinavia.
Okay.
And they're part of their brewing tradition going back ages and ages. And it's just not been a yeast strain or yeast strains that brewers in America have really paid much attention to.
Okay.
And it's largely because of certain yeast labs like Omega here in Chicago that we use quite often. They're wonderful. That they were able to, they were making these yeast strains available to us.
Okay.
And they're interesting for a whole slew of reasons. Number one, they tend to be fairly forgiving in terms of the brewing process.
What does that mean for the people who are not brewers?
Well, that's an excellent question. Whereas most yeast strains have a temperature range that they live well in.
Okay.
And you go much beyond that and they stop doing their job as well as you would like, or you'll get off flavors or whatnot. The Kveik strains tend to ferment at much higher temperatures. And so I don't know that for a fact, but I believe the reason why they've had such longevity in Scandinavian brewing is because you could ferment something during the summer, where the temperatures are high without hurting the beer in the process. Oftentimes when you get outside of a temperature range, especially when you're over the recommended temperature range, you start pulling in off flavors and whatnot. The Kveik strains, they are very resilient when it comes to temperature, but they're also quick fermenting. They produce a really nice beer with, I wouldn't say it's the same as like a lager strain, but you could certainly make some yellow beers with these Kveik strains that are wonderfully palatable. And they're quick fermentation, so you can turn out more beer in the same amount of time, especially when you're talking about lagers, which, as we all know, take a while.
Yes.
And without going into the, all the crap that goes along with that, lagers are wonderful, but lagers are tough,
Yeah.
But it depends on who you talk to. A lot
That's
of
true.
people,
Suck a Goldfinger, and they're like, lagers,
listen,
we do those all the time.
I learned from Germans. So
yes, there you go.
Like, I'm telling you, a Pilsner is the hardest beer to make, hands down.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing to hide behind,
We hear that all the time, and it's
exactly.
true.
It is very true.
If your Pilsner is not good.
And it's kind of fun, too, because, I'll go out with guys from work and whatnot, and we all get excited about interesting ingredients and whatnot. But every now and again, we'll drink the perfect Pilsner.
Yeah.
And it's just, I get more excited sometimes about that perfect Pilsner, which is I don't want to call it plain, but a straightforward beer. It is.
Well, it's
beer
simple.
at
It's
its
limited
essence.
ingredients, and it's like you said. If you can do it right with those few ingredients, you really can tell. And if they're off, you know
absolutely.
pretty quick. So this Kveik is paired with grapefruit and white pepper. What made that style and that the beer that the yeast helped create?
Well, it's interesting how we landed on that. We were making at our other location, Cultivate, in Ravenswood. We were making a series of Kveik ales up there, and the very, very talented chef that was there at the time, Carlos Cruz, he came up with the idea of adding grapefruit and white pepper to one of our Kveik ales. Now, Kveik ales were something that we were working with in terms. It was the backbone of a lot of our experimental botanical beers.
Okay.
So we were using it as sort of the foundation on which to make some more interesting things. Carlos came up with the idea of using grapefruit and white pepper, but it wasn't just grapefruit. one of the neat things about Cultivate is that there is a wood hearth.
Okay.
And so we actually grilled the grapefruit on the hearth to give it a little bit of caramelization and a little bit of smoke.
Yeah.
And then that was pureed and with the addition of white pepper, and that was then added to one of our Kveik ales. People liked it.
It's really good. The grapefruit does come through, but it's not. It's there. There's no mistaking that it's grapefruit.
There's a
but
lot
it's
of
not
grapefruit there.
overpowering where you go, because some people go grapefruit and they start, their face just puckers instinctually.
Sure.
But this is not quite. My face has not puckered the entire episode, and that's what I've been
We're
drinking the whole
still
time.
working on this one. We like it the way it is, but we're still trying to tweak it. We're always trying to make things better.
I wanted to ask, when you mentioned that, is there a point where it's done?
When
or
it's
are
in
you
a can, it's done.
It's done. Strawberry basil in the can.
Yeah, when
New
it goes,
England Hazy IPA in the can.
we definitely run through a few iterations of various. I wouldn't say all the time, but some of our beers we do run through several iterations before we find what's really good.
What do you think is an area to tweak on this beer? Because I like it. I like that it is refreshing because of the grapefruit. It's a nice light drinking beer.
Unfortunately, processing fruit, grilled grapefruit on a wood-fired hearth is great for very small batches.
Oh, okay.
To translate that into something that we can do on a higher level of production or, for distribution, that's been the real tricky bit.
Okay.
So we're trying, though I really like this beer, I think it's a damn fine beer.
Yeah.
We're still trying to regain those little nuances that we were able to gain from doing the hearth grilled grapefruit.
So
now,
what are you doing now? Are you using?
Well, we're going to try and use maybe just a handful of smoked malt, or maybe change our grapefruit products. That's the other thing too, is that, it's like we do a lot of fruit beers.
Sure.
And botanical beers as well. But different sources will give you different results. Just because you buy, just because you buy grapefruit from one purveyor does not mean it's the same quality or character that you would get from another purveyor.
Okay.
And so it's always a balancing act. Now, like any brewery, we do use processed fruits. We use fruit puree, as well as some fruit concentrates.
Okay.
And that's wonderful, but it just plain depends on if you're going to buy strawberry puree. It's going to be different from one purveyor to the next, to the next, to the next. And that's something that we battle, We have to find the right sources. And that's actually one of the things that Robert, the owner here, is so good at.
Is
when it comes to like botanicals in particular. He has less to do with the fruit. That's more a Randy Mosher thing that works, But when it comes to any source for your ingredients, you really have to nail that and build upon it.
Okay.
And, sometimes that's easy, sometimes it's not, But ginger, dehydrated ginger, which we use a lot of, well, not lately, but we historically have, is very different from source to source. There's a difference in potency, freshness, how it's processed, and whatnot. And these are things, it's these nuances that I think really set us apart from other breweries, because we're really getting into, is it a strawberry or is it, are we getting down to the mechanics of it? And strawberry is a really unusual fruit. Like we all see a beautiful strawberry,
Sure.
but how many times have we bitten into a strawberry and been a little disappointed
Yes.
by it?
Yes.
You know, like we see this beautiful fruit and we're
Blueberry is
expecting
like that too.
Yeah,
a lot.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And then when you break down the different flavor components of a strawberry, there's all sorts of layers there that you wouldn't necessarily pull out just by chomping on a strawberry. So this all comes back to finding not just the right ingredients, but the right purveyor, the right product produced by each of these sources.
Even if you're using the same purveyor, can there be those differences batch to batch?
Of course there can be. You know, it's an agricultural product.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, I mean, people, craft brewers love to bash on, AB InBev, and I have my own hatred for them. But
Mark the tape, Cody. Phil has hatred.
But the thing about Budweiser is it's exactly the same.
Yes.
No matter whether it's brewed in Beijing
Yep.
or whether it's brewed in St. Louis or one of their other 20-some breweries around the country. That's phenomenal.
Yes.
It's phenomenal.
It goes
that
back
they
to what
can
you
pull
said
that
about
off.
the Pilsner. If you could do it the same way, it's almost like McDonald's, too.
But they're able to achieve that success by knowing the ingredients and breaking apart and pulling down to its very essence. And they're able to make this same beer. Now, it's not my favorite beer, and it's certainly not my favorite brewery, but it's so key to know what your ingredients are.
Yeah.
So, yes, anyone can make beer. It's harder to make good beer, but to make good beer consistently, especially when you're talking about a fruit or a botanical or what have you, that's really hard. And that's something that we really like to get into. And we spend a lot of time working on that
Yeah,
stuff.
it sounds like it. I mean, this is not, this sounds, Forbidden Roots process sounds a lot more labor intensive than some other.
Well,
only because you're dealing with, like in the strawberry basil, you've got your wheat beer base that you have to come up with. And that, I'm guessing, the consistency of the base beer is got to be the same all the time. Then you've got two different botanicals that you're putting in there. So
sure.
Now you've
and,
got
for instance, strawberry basil, Hefeweizen, we'll do taste tests sometimes more than I want to think about. But choosing the right basil for that was laborious, to say the least. We went through so many different
I didn't even know there was a
basils.
difference. I thought basil was basil.
There's so many different varieties of basil, but then you're talking about where does it grow?
Yep.
Is it from Lebanon? Is it from Egypt? Is it from, seriously.
Yeah,
and these are all things that we have to take into consideration. Wow. And especially, when we're trying to create a consistent product, that's a challenge for us.
Yeah.
And if we were just making the Hefeweizen base for that would be easy.
Sure.
We do have, hop producers and maltsters. They have their shit together.
Yeah.
They know what the hell we're doing. So we can nail that from batch to batch to batch. We hope that we have the same fruit, the same botanicals, the same everything else that goes into producing a beer that people like, number one, and it's also the same from can to can, glass to glass.
Now, strawberry basil Hefeweizen was obviously one that you were struggling with when I said, what would you like to showcase? Because as you mentioned, these two, and what is the New England IPA called?
Oh, which one is this? We have so many. This is Ghost Tropic.
So these are some of your this is the strawberry basil Hefeweizen is the flagship. These are two of your best-selling beers.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you wanted to feature some others. One of the ones is something that you mentioned before, and you've been drinking this the whole time.
I have been, because it's
This
good.
is Sláinte. So tell us about Sláinte.
Sláinte is a beer that we collaborated on this project with Parlor Pizza.
Okay.
And how how do I get into this? It was such a whirlwind.
Well, how do in general how do collaborations come about, and how did this particular collaboration come about?
Well, that's an excellent question. I mean, they all, collaborations come from all kinds of crazy directions. I mean, Three Floyds, who I love, Three Floyds used to collaborate with metal bands.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what like the Melvins did for that
Sure.
beer or whatnot, but it was a collaboration nonetheless. So sometimes they're like that. Like,
Right.
hey, man, I like your music. You want to like come in while I'm brewing? And that's a
We'll
collaboration.
collaborate, yeah.
Other times it's, you'll meet someone, another brewer that you really hit it off with. You have like ideas and you want to make something, you want to push a little bit further with it. We did a collaboration with Ology out of Florida, wonderful brewery. And we ended up doing like a kettle sour collab with them that had Rayobus tea, hibiscus, and I can't remember what else.
Okay.
But some really interesting things.
Wow.
And that was sort of an amalgamation of one of their beers plus one of our beers.
Okay.
And so we found the middle ground and we thought like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we sort of like compared notes and took each of our beers one step further by combining them. So sometimes it's that. Sometimes it's just, like you like
somebody and
you like somebody.
Okay.
So what is going to be in the Crafty Brewers collaboration beer?
Geez, guys, we should talk about that because I'm game.
All
if
right,
you want to do a
we
collab,
would love to collab.
Because the way this for Sláinte, for instance,
Yes.
we did that with Parlor Pizza, and Eric is the beverage manager over there for I think all of their restaurants. I think they have a few restaurants. He cut his teeth on brewing, I think at Corridor or Dry Hop or one of the I think it was Corridor, one of the breweries in that group.
Yeah.
And they always do wonderful beer anyway. But we decided that we wanted to get together and make something that was a little bit interesting in the realm of what Forbidden Root does.
Right.
Plus, we were coming up to St. Patrick's Day.
Okay.
So he wanted to have an Irish-inspired beer, but that still works as a Forbidden Root beer.
Yeah.
And so we sat down and we talked about it. And it's like, what do you like? What is an Irish beer to you?
Yeah.
And so
how'd you settle on a red? Because
he came up with that idea, and that worked for me. Like that was one of the first things that he brought up, and I thought that's perfect because that gives us a lot of room to work with on the Forbidden Root front.
Right.
And so we made a fairly traditional Irish red ale, but then where the Forbidden Root came in, we used quite a bit of heather in the whirlpool for that, which is a wonderfully aromatic, botanical. And oh my God, when you put that in the whirlpool and all the smells come up, it was intoxicating.
Nice.
And we combined that with some orange, quite a bit of orange peel, and a little bit of orange oil on the back end. And we ended up making something that is Irish-y.
Yeah.
Irish-y.
Irish-y.
And
it's good. It's really good. It does have those unique flavors.
Yeah.
And I did get a little bit of the orange on the back.
Sure.
Cody, what'd you...
It's delicious.
There's a lot of roasted barley in this too. And quite honestly, Eric and I were talking about this. When we do it next year, I hope we're doing it next year, we're going to tweak it a little bit. But that's the process for us.
There's a tiny bit of sweetness in there. Where's the sweetness coming from?
That's
the
malt sweetness.
The malt sweetness, okay.
Which is not exactly right for the style.
Okay.
But that's the way we like it.
There you go.
I could drink a growler of this.
Yeah,
and he will on the drive home because he has no respect for the law.
As I like to say, I could drink 10 pounds of this.
It is really good.
It's so smooth. Like I could sit at the bar and drink this all night. Like it's
Yeah, I can drink that.
It's got a little bit of that sweetness. It's great.
For somebody who's never had anything with heather in it, you said it's very aromatic, but we hear that, some hops taste piney or something. What does
Sure.
heather taste like?
Well, heather is
or
more
does
of
it
an
just add
aromatic,
an
than
aromatic,
it is
okay.
a flavor in this particular instance. Heather is a cool plant. It's like all over Scotland
Yeah.
and Ireland and whatnot, and it's just something that is, it's everywhere, and anyone who's been in that part of the world knows what the smell is. So can I describe it? I don't know. It smells,
it just works.
it smells good, man.
Just smell it and shut up and
Yeah, I
enjoy
don't know.
it.
It's always tough. It's always tough when I'm asked, like, well, what does that taste like?
Yeah.
Tell me something that's similar to.
Okay.
And I don't always have a good answer for that, because I think it's really about experiencing that one thing.
Is that something that, because people come into Forbidden Root and there are some unusual ingredients that are in your beers, that I think would be a question that you guys get a lot, because people
we
just
do.
don't know. Like, I've never had heather in a beer. What is it?
Sure.
And the best
Well,
way is just try it, obviously.
Absolutely. And that's part of the reason why we're so generous in tastes.
Okay.
It's like, if you don't know what something is, taste it. Try
Yes.
it on for size. Try before you buy.
There you go.
and that's also one of the great things about having a beer on draft before someone that buys it in a can.
Okay, yes, that's true. That's
because
true.
sometimes with our beers, especially the more unusual ones, people are not going to necessarily look at the can and say, like, oh my God, that has Génépi in it. I love Génépi. They're not just not going to do that. But if you can
True.
give them a taste,
Yes.
give them like little just, and then
Try
we'll
it.
talk about it.
Yes. That makes a lot of sense.
And that's key too. And our staff, I think, is really good here about that. It's not just, oh yeah, try that. It's like, try that and let's talk about it a little bit.
Yeah.
What do you like about that? And
Okay.
also, as a brewer, we do a lot of distribution as well, but I really love brewing in a pub setting because I get that direct feedback.
Right.
And that's always been something that I get really excited about, is in like hearing people like, oh, I like this, but, I really think it could be like this. I may not agree with them.
Yeah, I was going to
but
say.
I appreciate the input.
Sure.
And maybe I'll learn something from that, or maybe I'll.
Well, I would imagine if you hear it once, it's like, but if it's something that you keep hearing, then you would have to pay attention at some point.
Yeah,
right?
of course,
and
of course.
see what's up.
And sometimes we just show them to the door.
Yeah, I'd toss them right away. They start criticizing the beer, There's go across the street to the liquor store, get some Budweiser.
Yeah, exactly.
Peasant,
Exactly.
move away.
Get out of here.
Now,
Can I throw in
throw
this-
in whatever you need to.
The orange character I get from Sláinte is not like the citrus orange in the middle. It's more like the orange peel, like the.
That's exactly what it is, Cody.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is.
See,
I know how to taste things.
Cody is a taster.
And even, and going back to our selection of ingredients, we went through a few different sources for orange peel. When Eric from Parlor and I were discussing it, we were originally talking about using the peel of Seville oranges, which is more of a bitter orange peel. And
That's where your barber's located, right?
yeah,
Seville.
Yeah, another horrible joke. I'm 2 for 2 on really bad dad jokes today.
That was an
you're
opera joke
knocking
for
them out of
those.
the park, Ryan.
All right, so you went through a bunch of orange peels.
So yes, so we were talking about using Seville orange peel.
what made that one? What made that one the one that you were initially
Well, that's a
drawn
really
to?
traditional ingredient.
Okay.
So a lot of brewers use Seville orange peel. It's a wonderful thing, but only if you can get it fresh and a quality product.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the things that Eric and I were discussing, is like, which orange peel are we going to use? And so we looked. I looked for some, and I couldn't find. I did find plenty of sources for Seville orange peel, but none that I thought were quality.
Okay.
So we ended up, the orange peel that we use in this is actually from Florida oranges, but we got the peel one was so fresh and so bursting with aroma, and it was a no-brainer.
Nice.
It was a no-brainer, and thankfully there's some wonderful places in Chicago. We use quite a bit of stuff from Epic Spices across the way.
Okay.
And they're just down the block from us. And my God, is their quality of be it orange peel or the white pepper that's in the Bicycle Fire. Their prices are also killer.
You gotta like that.
Which doesn't hurt. But we don't use them because of the prices. We use them because of the quality. And so they were able to source this stuff for us. And that's also another thing. Sometimes you have to have a relationship with your purveyors to get the right stuff.
Sure, because they know what you're looking for.
Exactly.
You trust them to get you what you need.
Going back to this Mr. Patayo head beer that I mentioned earlier. Patayo has a really short season. Okay. And so there's a very brief period where you can get Patayo at all.
Okay.
But we were able, through some folks that work here, one of the guys happened to know this Mexican woman who sold all these wonderful fruits and whatnot. And she was able to get a hold of enough cases of the Patayo.
Oh, my God.
And that was our source.
Nice.
And
I know a guy who knows a guy.
Yeah, exactly. But that means a lot because, sure, you can go to any of the same suppliers that all brewers use, and they all have, in addition to all the different malts and hops or chemicals or anything that you need in the brewing process, they'll all have flavorings as well.
Sure.
But some of those flavorings are crap. I mean, they're just crap, man. And you can throw, peach essence into a beer. That doesn't mean it's going to be good. No. You have to find the right stuff. And that's something that we're very passionate about, And I think in most instances, we're able to pull it off.
Seems like it. Another beer style that I hadn't heard of, we've all heard of IPAs.
Oh.
I have never heard of a black IPA, and this is Dark Phil, is that correct?
This is Black Phillip.
Black Phillip.
Which is not named after me.
All right.
It's actually named after the wicked Satan goat in the movie The Witch. Which,
wow.
Have you ever seen that movie?
I've seen The Witch. It's the woman from King's Gambit.
Yes.
Yes.
That black devil goat haunts me. And
all right.
He haunts me. So the black IPA is known as a black IPA. It's eventually been adopted as a legitimate style, and it's now known as an American black ale.
Okay.
But most basically, it's an IPA, heavily hopped with a lot of roasty notes, and is tart.
Oh, okay.
So that's largely what we're dealing with.
So the roasted
here.
malts are what make it
black.
And Satan makes it tasty. Is that what we're learning?
Satan makes it better.
Oh, sure.
And what was the original name of the black IPA? We got yelled at on TikTok because there was some other name.
Oh, they've also been called Cascadian Dark Ale.
That's right.
Yeah, that's
we
also...
did? We got yelled at online?
Oh, yeah. People on TikTok very upset that it's called Black IPA now.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
Yeah.
So it's a Cascadian Dark Ale.
And every
Cascadian
single
Dark
person
Ale.
that called us out used the acronym. They were like, oh, yeah, it was a CDA.
A CDA?
You should have renamed it from CDA.
I love when nerds get upset. Nerd on nerd crime.
See, all these acronyms and whatnot, I can't keep them straight. It's like BBD and DDD and...
I'm going to call it Satan's Dirty Juice.
Yeah, well, that's what I call it.
Whatever.
Please don't call anything Satan's dirty juice.
Don't at me. Don't at me on TikTok.
I'm calling you out. I'm not letting
dirty juice.
I'm not letting that one slide.
You're backing me up, man.
That better make the edit.
Oh.
The key is in a beer like this. The key is to balance the malty notes. Not the malty notes. It's really about that sort of that sharp roastiness.
Yep.
With the the bitterness of the hops.
What kind of hops are in here? Because you do get the bitterness. It's not as bitter as a lot of IPAs.
Sure.
But it does, and is that because it's offset by the maltiness, like you said? Or?
I would say, and this is primarily, we have a couple, I think we have 3 different hops in this, but it's primarily Centennial.
Okay.
Which is, one of my favorite hops. And, I love to see hops. I know that it's very trendy to use all these new, experimental hops and whatnot, but sometimes you got to go
to
back
the
home,
basics.
Is this lime in here? Is it lime in the aftertaste?
No, there's no lime there.
No
It's
lime.
Essence of evil.
Yes.
That's what's in there. Satan's dirty juice you talk about exotic ingredients. The essence of evil. I don't even know if Robert could have found that.
I don't know where the goat was living either, so.
It's a very citrusy aftertaste.
That's coming from the Centennial hops. It is a citrus hop. So mostly you'll see things, mostly it'll be compared to grapefruit and whatnot.
Yes.
There's a little bit of pine and whatnot as well.
Yes.
There is that little bit of grapefruit.
But there's definitely, and the grapefruit bitterness works, in my opinion, particularly well with sort of that, just a little bit of the sharpness of the dark malts. And this one is, the dark malts in this are primarily Carafa 3, which is anyway, brewers will know what the hell that is.
And it's a whole
one of my
different-
favorite malts.
a whole different grapefruit feel than in Bicycle Fire.
Yes.
You still get, there's that grapefruit tang or bitterness that people know when they had grapefruit, but it's different here in Satan's Dirty Juice. I keep saying this because, Phil,
Satan's
you don't know
Dirty
the argument we're going to have tomorrow when Cody goes, I'm not using any of Satan's Dirty Juice. I don't know why you kept pushing it. I don't know why you embarrassed Phil. He created this beer, and now you're calling it
cracking me
Satan's
up,
Dirty
buddy.
Juice.
There's no arguing. I just edit the thing, and then Brian sees it when it's done.
You know I'll go on a rampage, a social media rampage.
I have all the power.
Well, do you? You
Yeah.
got most of it, but I don't know if you have all of it. All right,
89%.
before we get to our final questions, there was something that I read on the website, and I'm fascinated by this.
I didn't do it.
Well, I think you might have. And I thought of baseball when I heard this, because what is your flavor torpedo? What is the flavor torpedo here at Forbidden Root, and how do you use it? And does it have anything to do with getting dirty juice into a beer?
Dirty juice. Yes. The dirty juice. I don't want to go there.
All right.
The flavor torpedo is, some people call it a Grant or it be a hop back. It's
Okay.
known by a different name, but it's a vessel by which you can infuse flavors to your beer.
Okay.
That could be hops, that could be fruit, that could be many other things. But what it is, it's a vessel that sort of piggybacks on our brew house.
Okay.
And we evacuate it with CO2. We put our whatever ingredients we're using into it, evacuate it with CO2, and then we pump the hot wort out of the brew house through this vessel.
The torpedo.
Through this vessel. And where it really works for us is when we're using an incredibly large amount of an ingredient.
Oh, okay.
Certainly, there isn't a brewer out there that doesn't know what it means to throw hops into a whirlpool or spices into a whirlpool, but this takes it to the next level.
Okay.
It's a dedicated device by which we can pump our wort through and pick up the flavors. And that can be, we've used it for cherry stems for one of our beers. We've used it for hops, certainly. It's best suited for whole cone hops and whatnot. Most brewers these days, and I'm one of them, prefers pellets, and even more so extracts and whatnot. And that's something that's a wonderful advantage when you're talking about a loss of volume. When you use a ton of dry hops or whatnot, there's all that material in the fermenter and you lose that liquid that goes along with it. So if you're able to use extracts or whatnot, then you don't have that vegetal material, and you can maybe get a barrel or two more out of each turn.
Oh, okay.
Now, going back to the torpedo, that's something that the owner here is very proud of. We actually own 2 of them.
Oh, very nice.
And but we only use one at a time. So
Really?
go figure.
Got to keep the other one
Go
just
figure.
ready.
The other one, we have one that's dedicated to the brew house. The other one is mobile, so we can move it around the brewery and recirc something, recirc out of a tank.
Oh, okay.
You know, so we can use it on the hot side when we're using it in the brew house. We use it in the cold side when we're using the one we push around the brewery.
Very nice.
And
We're getting close to time.
but I have so much to say.
I know you do. That's why I have 2 things that I wanted to talk to you about. Cody's already mad at me because he thinks he's going to edit out Satan's dirty juice, but the Dark Lord will not allow it. I'm going to give you a choice, Cody. Are we going to ask Phil about how his previous career led him to beer, or about their very unique growler filling method and the difference between the 2 types of growlers you can get here at Forbidden Root? Or are we going to go over and ask both?
Well, it depends. What was the previous career?
Well,
Well, he was in film
I was in film and video
production that somehow led to beer.
And I'll tell you, that's a good story.
Let's
actually.
tell that story.
If it's a
then.
good
Because
story,
I think it's a good story. It's my story, so I
It's
think
your
it's
story, yeah. And
So-
listen, he can't edit your story. He can edit my stories, but he can't edit your stories.
good. Like so many people that were that have been and still are creatively inclined, you end up in the food and beverage industry, right? I mean,
Hence this podcast.
you know, I mean, you know, you're auditioning and you're not killing, you know, not getting that job
Right.
or what have you. Or, well, for me, I was working largely freelance for my film and video production.
Okay.
And so there's gaps, you know. I mean, it'd be great to know what your work schedule is and know how much money is coming in. But when you're working freelance, you never know when that next gig is going to happen.
Sure.
So, like so many people, I ended up working in the food and beverage industry.
Okay.
Well, I happened to work, my first bar job was a place in Evanston called Merle's Number One Barbecue.
Okay.
And it was a great place. It's long gone, but it was a great place. And one of the cool things about that establishment was it was so ahead of the game for craft beer.
Oh, really?
And this is going back to the 90s. And we had, you know, of course, we had Anchor Steam and Sierra Nevada.
Right.
And we would have beers like Red Hook out of Seattle.
Oh,
that
wow.
I don't think that they're around anymore. Maybe they are. There was one of the things I think AB InBev put out of business. But we also had Firestone
Hence
Walker.
the hatred.
We had Firestone Walker on long before anyone knew what Firestone Walker was.
Wow.
They pulled out of the market after that.
Yeah.
And then they came back with glory later. But we had all these beers. We even had New Glarus on tap in the late 90s.
How did you manage that?
Well, they were available in the market, and they were for a brief period of
Okay,
time available in the Chicago market.
Really?
And we also had regional beers like Shell's Brewing out of Wisconsin and whatnot. And so anyway,
Was that the owner? Was that a beverage director? Because
It
that
was-
sounds like a wild assortment to have in Evanston in the early 90s.
A lot of that has to do with the general manager of that establishment,
Okay.
a fellow named Rob Stromby. He still owns and operates a place in Evanston called Prairie Moon, where I ran the beer program for many, many years. But anyway, so I'm tending bar at Merle's Number One Barbecue, and with all these actors and singers and filmmakers and all of that. And we used to have a great time because we would make short films after we closed at night. And the crazy thing about it is that some of the people that were in these short films that we made after night, they're like big successes now.
Really? Give us
Yeah.
an example.
Danny McCarthy who has been in Coen Brothers films. He's been a hit on Broadway.
Wow.
He comes every year to work with Steppenwolf every year. He's kind of a big deal, and he was like one of the stars of our short films. We have Stephanie March, who was a key player on Special Victims Unit.
Really?
Whatever the hell that was called.
That name sounds. Her name sounds very familiar.
Gorgeous woman, very talented, and I worked with her, and we had a lot of fun with that. But I digress. So I'm working in this joint. I'd already known beer because my dad loved good beer.
Yeah.
My older brother knew good beer, and so here I am working in this place, getting turned on to all this cool beer, and I'm in my 20s at this point. And one of my coworkers, he started homebrewing, and he's like, "Hey, Phil, you want to do some homebrewing with me?" So we started homebrewing together, inspired by the beers that we had available to us, and we were trying to duplicate many of these beers. We were like, I remember trying to nail the Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, because of course,
why not?
So we
the OG.
and so we did that, and our goal, Mark and I, our ultimate goal, which is so funny and so 20s. We decided that we wanted to make beer good enough that we could get shit-faced on.
You got to be able to get drunk on your own beer.
Yeah, exactly.
And have your friends get drunk on it.
But I have to say, some of those early batches were really rough, But that's where my love of craft beer and my desire to push it into something more than just being a bartender.
Very nice.
At one point, I though I still love the arts and I will always dabble in it, and I still do, I love the fact that I was exposed to these things, working with the right people, the right time, and I was able to really, get turned on to something that still sticks with me today.
That's very cool.
So
that's a good origin story.
Yeah, well,
we see, Cody, it was a good story. You doubted it. I don't know why.
I know Cody did.
When did
Cody's
I doubt
been giving
it?
me the eye.
Cody,
when did I doubt
listen,
it?
Phil, I've seen that eye for almost 2 decades. Tune it out. That's what I do. It's the best way to keep moving.
But anyway,
Cody gives you the look. You just go, okay, cut it.
I had a great time doing that, and that's how I started cutting my teeth on interesting styles, craft beer, and, back when they still just called it microbrews.
Yes, back in the day. All right, we have reached...
Wait, what about the growlers?
Oh, you want to get to growlers too?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, listen, most places have, every place has growlers. But Forbidden Root has this high-end kind of growler filler, and you also...
Which we don't use anymore.
Oh, you don't use it anymore? Well, forget it then. I did research. You got to update the website.
Well, we do have to update the website.
No, I'm kidding.
The thing is that it's an Austrian piece of equipment, and it has so many moving parts.
Oh,
and
get 'em.
it's like to get replacement parts for this is exceptionally expensive.
Okay.
And you have to work with a relatively small company. So as much as we love that machine.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this, though, because even you might not do it anymore because you don't have this machine, but for a while you were doing glass and metal growlers, correct?
Yes.
I've only seen, growlers I've seen in cans.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen a metal growler. Is there a benefit or difference really between glass and metal, and why would you offer both?
The reason why we use the metal growlers is because it's largely like a thermos.
Okay.
And so there was an advantage to, having, if you're going to fill a growler and go out to the lakefront or something and you want to keep it cool, that was the advantage there.
Okay.
Ultimately, in terms of your experience, if you put in a glass growler and you take that, home,
You just start drinking it?
Yeah.
All
I mean,
right.
the whole thing about, that's another thing. You got to drink this stuff, man. I don't like people that collect beer.
Here we go.
I don't
knew
like
the
people
hot
that
text would start
collect
coming.
beer. I mean, there's wonderful beers out there, but don't stick it in the back of your closet. There's not a brewer alive.
I don't need to age it in my basement, Phil.
Exactly.
Oh, Cody. What are we? We've been aging beers forever. I've got I've got a Miller Lite case from 1984 that I've been aging, hoping that it would turn into something.
Why didn't you bring some in, Brian?
Old. I got 30-year-old Miller Lite.
I hope it was sitting in the sunlight too.
I have. It's very hot in my basement. I don't believe dark and cool is the way to age beer. I think really hot with direct sunlight, beating on the can like a hammer.
Hot Take Corner.
Oh, Hot Take Corner.
Hot Take Corner.
I loved Hot Take Corner, that we're not supposed to age the beer. I love it. All right, so we ask the same 4 questions to every brewer at the end of the episode.
I'm ready.
I know, you look ready or terrified. I can't tell which you are.
One of the two.
You're all right. Either way, we're going to ask them. So the first one is, what is the hill you'll die on? A beer style that maybe some of the people, and this is going to be, I think, harder for you at Forbidden Root because you guys experiment with all kinds of stuff. But is there a style of beer that people may be clamoring for, and you just as the brewer, no, I'm not doing this.
You know, I have a lot of experience brewing hazy IPAs.
Okay.
People love them.
Yes.
And I think we make a damn good hazy IPA of all varieties. We have several. I am so sick of hops. No, I mean, I shouldn't say that. I'm not sick of hops, but that's not what I want to drink at the end of the day.
Okay.
You know, I love beer, and sometimes a hazy will hit the spot.
Sure.
But I personally don't need an 8%, hazy beer.
Yes.
It's just a lot, it's just a lot. I love making them.
Right.
And again, I mean, they're some of our best sellers, and I do drink them, but my go-to is not a hazy IPA.
What is your go-to off-the-clock beer? That's question number 2. Sometimes question number 3. We don't know. It doesn't matter.
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, my favorite beer is always the beer that's in my hand.
Sure, that
right?
makes sense.
I mean, anyone's going to tell you that. But if I really get down to it, I love Belgian styles.
Okay.
I love Belgian styles.
What is it about them that make them so palatable to you?
What does
it taste like?
What does it taste like? Okay. Orval. Orval is a masterpiece of a beer. Okay. Orval is a Trappist brew, and it is simply one of my favorite beers, hands down. And you'll ask the monks, why don't they make more than one beer? Well, they won't answer you because they've taken the vow of silence.
They got nothing to say.
But if they were to tell you, they would say, there's no reason to make another beer because this is perfection.
All right.
And I dare say that there are hundreds, thousands of brewers out there that would put Orval in their top tier of beers. It's one of my desert island favorites.
Nice. Now, you mentioned earlier that and I forget the cactus's name, but you said it was hard to process because you were getting your hands, it was very rough. Is there a beer that you've made that maybe went over really well here with your loyal following at Forbidden Root, but for whatever reason, whether it's bloody hands or you just can't get the ingredients anymore, that you won't be brewing again?
Well, it's that kettle sour with the Feijoa.
Okay.
is definitely one of my favorites. And I mean, I'll throw in the Mr. Potato Head too, because
it's hard to get this stuff.
Oh man, it's like that fruit is so expensive and it's so hard to process. And I would love to be able to do that seasonally.
Sure.
But it's just not possible.
People will not pay $40 for a draft?
And nor should they. No. Nor should they.
That's true.
I mean, I love beer, but, it's like beer is supposed to be for the
accessible
masses.
To everybody, yeah.
It's like used to be like buying a Cubs ticket or something.
Right.
I mean, it's like a cheap, afternoon
exactly.
out. You still go see the Sox, though.
Well, sure, which,
But,
as a Sox fan, it's very sad that you could just go for free,
I love the Sox too. My mom was a South Sider. My dad was a North Sider. I'm one of those oddballs.
A divided home.
Yeah, it was pretty tough. My mom, who's turning 90 tomorrow,
wow,
is strangely a Packers fan I
is
don't
he.
know how the hell that happened.
So is that one over there.
Yeah, I don't know. But I mean, look at the Bears
To
lately.
each their own. Yeah, it makes it easy.
Well, it happened for me because the Bears sucked for most of my childhood.
True.
I understand that.
Also, can I say, I'm so glad you did not say milk stout when you said the beer you wouldn't do again, because I had one of your Chai Towns, which is a milk stout with cocoa nibs and I can't read the sign.
and chai seasoning.
And
or
chai
chai
seasoning.
spices,
Chai
excuse
spices
me.
and cocoa
It was
nibs.
like nice, smooth, like middle ground stout. Nothing crazy about it, but the little aftertaste of chai, like very nice.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good beer. But people, so many craft beer aficionados are looking for the big, brutish, stouts. We all love Bourbon County, right?
Yes,
I mean,
sure. But you can't
and-
drink that all the time.
No, and this was sort of designed for people that don't necessarily want that. Well, apparently there's not many people that don't want that.
Are they the same CSA people?
I probably. No,
Oh,
my wife and
nerds.
I went down to
Love
a brewery. We stopped by some brewery in Bloomington or somewhere downstate on
Fat
a road
Squirrel?
trip. I don't remember what it was.
Okay.
But whatever brewery it was, like it was like you'd order, something with some adjunct, and it's like it was just the adjunct. If you ordered a peanut butter stout, it's like I'm eating a spoonful of peanut butter, and it was disgusting. We couldn't finish a single beer.
There's some of those out there, and I certainly will not speak unkindly of other brewers, but yeah, there's beers I've had that I cannot friggin'
If
drink.
we give you an incentive, will you talk badly about other brewers?
Off camera, yes.
Okay.
We have nothing to offer. There's no budget.
Off camera, I'll tell you about all
listen.
the breweries I love, though.
Yeah, see, that's all right.
And there's some fantastic ones in
There
Chicago.
are some great. No,
There
Chicago
really
is. We're very lucky here, and I'm finding, because that's what I do when I travel is I find local breweries. There's a lot of places with really good beer. Chicago's got to be right near the top.
Yeah,
And as we
we're
sit
lucky
here,
that way.
Forbidden Root, obviously in the name it says restaurant and brewery, so it doesn't have to be Forbidden Root's food. But what is your favorite beer and food pairing?
Oh, that's a tough one. There's so many good ones. I would pick a Texas slow smoked brisket with, I don't know, man. I think just like a really nice, crisp American pale ale.
Nice. Does that go
I
back
think-
to your Evanston barbecue days?
Yeah, it kind of does.
All right.
It kind of does. I mean, I love so many beers and so much food, but
Yeah, you
yeah,
mentioned
that's-
as a foodie.
Yeah.
That's a classic pairing.
that's
though. That's
I mean,
that's a
that
perfect
to
pairing.
me is like summer.
Yeah.
Because I love, like so many other brewers. I don't know what it is about brewers. They also love to slow smoke meat.
Yes.
Well,
Well, you're
there's
infusing
definitely
flavor into something.
Absolutely.
So it's
And-
the same kind of thing.
and for me too, it's like smoking meats, be it a pork shoulder or a brisket or what have you, is a perfect excuse to sit in the backyard
Exactly.
and drink beer anyway.
Yes, that's why I like the movement toward a lot of lower alcohol, Mexican lagers or Pilsners.
Absolutely.
Because you can sit there for 8, 10, 12 hours as you're smoking a brisket and
Absolutely.
just relax and enjoy
Yeah.
yourself.
Absolutely.
Well, Phil, it has been a pleasure.
Man, I've
It has
had a
been
good
lot of fun.
time.
I'm glad.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Phil Zaleski has been our guest today on Crafty Brewers. He is the head brewer at Forbidden Root Restaurant and Brewery. ForbiddenRoot.com is the website. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Crafty Brewers Tales Behind Craft Beer. Be sure, my friends, to support your local breweries, because without your support,
Yes,
it
do
is
that.
rough going for some of your favorite places to enjoy fantastic beers. And if you have a brewery you'd like us to visit, or if you're a brewer who, like Phil, does not seem to have had a really bad time, then you can please drop us a line at craftybrewerspod.com. Our email is craftybrewerspod@gmail.com. That's where you can send us the email. Brewers, I've been sending you emails. Look at them. let me know what you want to do.
You know who you are.
You know who you are. I don't want to. Don't make. Listen, like Phil,
That's
I will
spooky.
not name names. But if you are a brewer with an email, you know I've been trying to contact you. Cody, we know that everybody can listen on Apple Podcasts. And if they are listening on Apple Podcasts, what would you like them to do?
If you could leave a review, that'd be great. The number one thing you can do to help the show is find this episode on YouTube and leave a comment, any comment. I literally don't care what you say. We read them all, and we will reply to all of them.
Yes, so please do that. Tell your friends. We're happy to have you. Thanks again to Phil Zaleski from Forbidden Root. Look at him right there.
Thanks,
there
Brian.
he is. You're
Thanks,
very
Cody.
welcome. I'm Brian Noonan. Phil, cheers. Thanks for being here.
Cheers, my brother.
Thank you. And Cody, do you have any last words while I sip my beverage?
No, the cheers is actually the last thing. So you could do the cheers, and then
Or we can say sláinte.
could say
you do
sláinte.
that. I don't know. I pounded those. They were so
They
good.
were so good.
I don't have any words left.
You're just thirsty, man.